Season 15, which ran from January to March 2015. So here's 2 lessons I learned from watching the Belgian version last year. 1, just because you can do a season to the mole every year doesn't mean you should force it when you really don't have a very good plan for the season. And 2, never get caught without a plan, a backup plan, and an escape plan. If things start going wrong, you will need to adapt. And if you adapt well enough, the audience will think you planned it that way from the start. Season 15, like a lot of early 2010 seasons of Survivor, has no reason to exist other than to continue Wie is de Mol's run on television. They didn't have a good cast, they didn't have good challenges, they didn't have good gameplay, they didn't even have the location they wanted. I actually have conflicting sources telling me where they were initially planning on going for this season. One source tells me that Season 15 was initially set in Siberia, in and around Russia. Russia in the mid-2010s was not a favorable destination, especially for a country as forward-thinking about homosexuality as the Netherlands, and honestly, neither was the other option I was hearing was the original choice. Texas. As wild as a season set in Texas could have been, they're just as bad as Russia about that sort of thing. And considering that there were 2 openly gay contestants this season, I think it's better they went with their backup, in this case being Sri Lanka. Just one problem. All of the originally drafted challenges now had to go out the window, meaning these guys had to work on the fly to make new Sri Lanka challenges. So if you watch this season and wonder why there's multiple challenges based around our Dutch heroes trying to tell Sri Lankans apart, multiple challenges that are simply getting around town, and a challenge that's just find a bunch of logos that'll direct you back to where you started, that is why. Sri Lanka tries, there's some cool stuff around here, but there's not much opportunity for this country to be showcased properly. But the producers thought that the only way to make up for rough challenge building would be to emphasize advantages. This season is stuffed with advantages. Tons of Joker give-outs, a challenge where players have to sneak Jokers in plain sight, the return of the black exemption, multiple blocks per episode dedicated solely to strategy and Joker give-outs, too much time dedicated to a contestant, Martine Sandefort, lying about having the black exemption and just doubling down. Jokers are even given out in the finale. We're doing a Joker challenge in episode 9, and it just feels way too late for that. I think the best way to sum up the gameplay this year is that one contestant, Ashwet El Maludi, has gameplay that is completely tied to advantages. He finds 2 exemptions in episode 1, is safe until episode 3, then is saved by a non-elimination twist, finds a ton of Jokers in episode 4 which are nullified by the black exemption, and is executed the first opportunity he gets to see his results. What else can one say but LOL? The gameplay was dire all around, honestly. So much was concerned with advantages and Jokers, and not enough, honestly, was concerned with moling. Really, only 2 people were successful at self-sabotage, Marlene and Chris. Arguably a lot more successful than the mole. A lot of the rest of the cast were ruled out on account of their character. Like, people like Victor, Rick, and Carolina just aren't going to be the mole, just in concept. Carolina was trying to be mysterious, but I could tell when she was in gameplay mode. Also, I'm glad I got to see more of her in here than in De Verraders, because she's a lot of fun.
Wie was het dan? Jij? Omdat ik zwart ben?
Martine had moments of sabotage, but I could tell they were a ploy. Even some of the earlier boots I had already ruled out, like Eveline, who I wish had gone farther just to hear more of her inexplicably rough yelling voice.
Ik dacht gelijk, oké, we moeten nu weg, want anders stappen ze in die trein. Oh my god, wat is het spannend!
You just sort of puttered around waiting for people to go home that you knew couldn't be the mole. And that's what this season felt like. A lot of waiting for an outcome that seemed obvious. And all the while, some of the most pathetic gameplay possible is happening, resulting in one of the lowest group pots to date. This is the closest Art has gotten to full-on channeling Peter Jan, because a lot of this season he's just concerned with these people.
Jullie liepen rond met de belangrijkste kunstschatten van het land. En jullie hadden het over die oude vent, 2 kerels op een bankje. Mooi, dat respect voor het culturele erfgoed.
Honestly, I don't blame him. Yes, it's thanks in part to a strong mole, but these guys felt like they weren't trying at times. Case in point, Chris Zagers, who I swore was the mole. For the whole show, it seemed like Chris was the only person doing any sabotage. That just sort of piled onto the monotonous quality of the show. Everybody was suspecting Chris. Chris was not only losing the money, but doing it in really obvious ways, and it was just taking this glacial pace. I didn't understand who else it could be if it wasn't Chris, because nobody else was doing any sabotage. But then Chris leaves before the final 3, and I just throw up my arms in anguish. Because if it's not Chris, then what are we even doing here? Alright, let's see. It's not Marlene, she's getting a winner's edit. It's not Marguerite. I ruled her out in episode 3. Is it as simple as just Rick Van de Westerlaken? I know he takes over as host, but he's not great at sabotage, and I just assume he's playing to win. So yeah, towards the end of the finale, which somehow drags, I was just giving up and expecting it to be Rick. Margaret being the mole is one of the most inexplicable endings I've seen in a while. I literally had to go, well, what did she do? And yes, you see her in the finale say that she's going to ensure this group had the lowest pot ever, did the smallest things when she was entrusted, and achieved full mastermind status in a very fun way. But I still think someone like Chris did more to keep the pot low than she did. Look, I'm glad the mole ended up being someone fun and three-dimensional like Margaret Randall Linden. It's better than being someone without a personality. Hey, what's Rick doing there? But I just don't really think the edit told me much about how good of a job she did. The edit barely even gave me much about how Rick won. Marlene had better gameplay moves. Rick just aligned with her and out-tested her in the end. So, like, if the challenges aren't good, the location's an afterthought, the gameplay is atrocious, there's no winning story, there's barely a mole story, and there's barely any storytelling at all, then what's the goddamn point? That's really what it is with Season 15. It's not the worst. Actually, for a while, this was the worst of my rankings, but it's exceedingly dull, duller than even Season 12. It can't justify its ending, and it has no reason to exist. There are brief instances of success here, but it was a slog to get through, and it wasn't in any way satisfying.
Oh my gosh.
Season 16, which ran from January to March 2016. As I was getting through 15 and 16, a colleague of mine who'd seen all of these was telling me that I should hope to get through them as soon as possible because the following 2 seasons were more back to basics for the franchise. And that's a description I always enjoy when it comes to reality TV. China and Tocantins are great back to basics Survivor seasons. I love those. But I think he was trying to say that after 15 and 16, the producers just kind of realized they'd gotten a little carried away with advantages and just needed to focus more on gameplay. And while 16 is better than 15, I can see why. The distinguishing factor of this season is that it's a season in a beautiful location, the Dominican Republic, with a lot of charm and character, and the season crafting attention is going less towards tailoring the challenges to the location and more tailoring the advantages to the season. This is a season with very, very basic challenges that could be played anywhere. So many challenges open with confessionals of people talking about how beautiful the locations are, and then going, oh, and we also had to do a challenge. That's really the thing about this season. It's gorgeous in the Dominican Republic, but so many challenges are the same. Relays and cash hunts and advantage drops. There are some good ones. The atmosphere of the luggage challenge in episode 7 is fantastic. An abandoned hotel with bellboys roaming the premises. I like the final GoPro challenge, the Stop All the Clocks challenge, the one where they roam around the city in old cars collecting cutouts of themselves that nearly goes awry when one of the cars breaks down. But again, the emphasis is on upping the ante in terms of advantages. This one has everything you'd expect, lots of advantage drops and black exemptions and strategy conversations based solely on jokers. If you like that, great. I just think it takes away from actual gameplay. The big hook this season was that the money, which was specially made, had the players' faces on the front and, as alluded to several times, a mosaic of the mole's face on the back. And while one contestant nails this, nobody else really thinks to truly sift through the money, even as Art nearly spells it out for them. A lot of Art frantically waving his arms, hoping for people to notice anything this season.
Het Engelse woord voor typemachine, typewriter, is het één na langste woord dat je kunt maken op de bovenste rij van je toetsenbord. Kennen jullie dat?
Ja.
Mooi. Het is de enige zin die goed was.
Nee.
De enige. Echt? Jullie hebben zelfs een zin verzonnen.
This is a great Art season, and they once again made him a co-conspirator of the mole from the beginning, including this really cool opening. This is pretty close to the aesthetic of Belgium, ironically considering that Belgium would return that very year. Art really nails the spy movie aesthetic, even topping Michelle de Vliger, who did a similar intro in Season 3, and sets the tone perfectly for the season to come. I kinda wish the rest of the season leaned on this more, a lot like the running briefings that Angela did in Season 4. Even with all the structural issues this season has, it does have a very good cast. And something the season does really well is delivering great stock characters. You know what they're going to do all the time, because many of them have very simple moral codes. You know Cecile Narinx, the editor of Harper's Bazaar, is going to be uneasy with the dirtiness and unfashionability of the game. There's a wonderful amount of this.
De schaduwzijde van deze opdracht, dat moet ik toch wel eventjes meegeven, is dat ik schoenen aan moest die ik van zijn lang zal zijn leven niet aan zou trekken. Ook niet als iemand een geladen geweer tegen mijn slaap zou zetten.
Jij had een missie bij het meedoen aan Wie is de Mol.
Om niet in afritsbroeken en flodder t-shirts voor de kamer te verschijnen.
Nou, dat is gelukt.
You know that harpist Remy von Kesteren is going to be easygoing. You know that field hockey player Taika Taikema is going to be a big goober all the time. And most crucially, you know what former police officer Ellie Lust, one of the best characters of the season, is going to do every time because she will always have the moral code of, well, a police officer.
I don't need you.
Yeah.
Ellie seems like a casting decision from a civilian season, similar to Yvonne in season 2. Someone who feels completely human and completely real, and is the perfect kind of person to set loose on this season, because she's always going to be completely blunt and serious about everything. And not only is this by itself funny, but Ellie bouncing off the other players like Annemiek, Rob, and Tim makes for some really fun stuff.
Ik weet niet of het een trucje is of dat ze zo is, maar Ellie kan alle mimiek uitschakelen, dus die kan...
Heb ik Rob voor Ellie? Kom eens uit. Hier, Rob voor Ellie. Over.
The single most crucial thing about Ellie and about this season is that Ellie leaves after episode 4, but she's such a good character that she looms large over the remainder of the season. Almost every episode of the rest of the run features a character making a crack about Ellie and what she would do in this situation.
Even wachten, het begin valt weg van je tekst.
Hier Ellie.
Om met Ellie Lust te spreken. Wij waren als eerste ter plaatse, Cecile en ik.
Wacht even een Ellie Lust. Ja, hier.
Ja?
Rotzak.
En daar stond Ellie Lust te waken over lijken, te kijken of alle etordiscipline nog goed was.
Ik stond daar met die porto. Klaas, kom binnen. Denk aan Ellie van, oh ja, hoe moest het ook alweer?
And they even bring it up in the following seasons.
Etordiscipline. Daar heb je geen mol voor nodig om dat te laten mislukken. Ondanks alle goede lessen van Ellie Lust.
We gaan nu terug.
Ellie Lust is Wie is de Mol's answer to David Jelinski. Don't think too much about that. But yeah, some of the best moments of this season involve dynamics, players bouncing off each other, fun things happening there.
Flop, gevangen. Als een forel in een net.
Ik ben nog blind, dat was ik vergeten te zeggen.
I haven't really even gotten into mole suspicions because there honestly wasn't a ton to go by. For most of the show, it's really only Rob and Taika doing sabotage, and I figure if it's either of them, they're terrible. Annemiek does some stuff as well, but I know it's not her. So many people on this season, like Remy, Ellie, and Cecile, just rule themselves out on the basis of their character. So after a while, I'm just going, is it Tim? Is it Taika? I'm grasping at straws. But that is not what the public experienced. Because in episode 2, there's a Meet the Mole challenge with prior moles, and it is filled with subtle clues to the mole's identity. One of which, as I was informed prior to the season, was so obvious that it made the mole's identity painfully clear and erased any mystery for most people watching. And while this was something most Dutch watchers picked up on, many English speakers also did. So I watched it, and I didn't see it. I wasn't picking anything up. And as it turned out, the final 5 clues ended with words that spelled out the mole's name.
Ja, dat was een flinke hint, Klaas.
So if the producers have to make a clue so obvious that pretty much everybody watching knows who the mole is by episode 2, do they really have that much faith in the audience's ability to track Klaas's sabotage? Because for the most of the run, he wasn't doing much. A lot of very subtle things and moves that weren't as lethal as many others in this season. He's just kind of a bland character, which does happen when all the interesting characters are gone by 5, and you're left with people like Tim and Annemiek and Rob, and also Taika trying his best. But yeah, Klaas didn't come onto my radar much because he didn't do very well in terms of sabotage. If anything, he kind of stuck to the top a lot and made positive contributions.
Je vieze uitslovers dat we zijn, dan verdenkt niemand ons meer.
Yes.
Ja, mooi zo.
And thus, his reveal as the mole wasn't one I really wanted to happen. Same with Tim winning. I kind of thought it was going to be Annemiek. I guess it's fine, just a perfectly suitable outcome and the victim of a pretty rough boot order. I do like many aspects of Season 16, mostly relating to the cast, location, humor, and dynamics, but there's a lot that's wrong with it. It doesn't have a very satisfying ending, and it runs out of steam despite some great late challenges. The advantages were valued, and thus the storytelling suffered. And judging by the fact that the following seasons would go back to basics, it seemed like the producers finally got wise to it.
Eigenlijk zijn er ontzettend veel rare dingen gebeurd. En ja...
So there's a scene in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the first James Bond film without Sean Connery, at the very beginning where our new Bond, George Lazenby, beats up a bad guy and he doesn't get the girl. And he looks over at us and says,
"This never happened to the other fella."
20 minutes into the first season after a creative reset, picking up directly after a season set in the Dominican Republic, we see this.
Hi, do you know if there's an envelope delivered at your place?
You could go into the front door there. But yeah, as for this part, it's closed.
It's closed off.
Thank you.
Dat was in Spaans heel lastig geweest.
That's a meta callback gag, coming from science guy Diederik Jekyll, a guy I knew very well from the first season of De Verraders. Are we gonna be okay? Season 17, which aired from January to March 2017. The difference between Season 17 and the three that directly came before it is striking. The advantages have been scaled back. The cast is much better. The format is different, where every episode has themes and challenges that carry throughout instead of the typical segmented feeling. It does feel like there's been a leveling up after years of despondency, in several departments. Part of this owes to its setting, all around the great state of Oregon. Now, I'd never been to Oregon. I've heard Portland is really nice, but I've just never made it out there. And so the first thing that Season 17 has going for it is that it made me want to go to Portland even more. The city looks really cool. You get to see them rolling through bookstores and running around town and nabbing food trucks.
Korean and Thai are not the same. We're looking for a Thai.
But this season gets cooler once they start exploring Oregon proper. Yes, there's an episode or so of Wild West Pastiche, an Oregon Trail episode, and one near the Painted Hills, but stuff where you get Northwestern culture like rodeos, antique shops, ghost towns, auctions.
Ik kon die man niet verstaan.
And this incredible challenge in a basement maze where mannequins become live actors in one of the most wonderfully scary reveals in franchise history make this really memorable. Amazing that a lot of the basement maze challenge connects to pre-existing history, while also making excellent atmosphere for a mole challenge. This season can be downright beautiful, and has a lot of moments where the backdrops enhance the feel of an already strong season.
Te denken van wauw, Amerika, net zoals in de film, weet je wel.
You know, this is just a letter from my mama. And I'm gonna keep it to myself.
I don't know what you're talking about. Where's the letter?
Which envelope?
Plus, like in Belgium, Arizona, you get the Americans bouncing off of our European heroes.
Button with a green fingerprint.
No, het is de koning.
Grapjas, die Amerikanen.
This does indicate the value of the challenge craftsmanship, which was very high this season. I think my favorite challenge this season was the laser tag one set in an amusement park that had a lot of really fun moments.
Sorry jongens, ik ben in een vuurgevecht.
Die dacht gewoon dat ze in Wereldoorlog 3 zaten.
Fuck it, ik neem gewoon een prullenbak mee als schild. Ik zweer het je.
The idiom challenge in the antique shops is a very classic mole challenge that this cast was fun enough to really nail. I'd have loved to see this on a Celebrity Mole US season. I also really liked the biking alphabet challenge. It was simple enough, and thereby doomed to fail, but the moments of these people trying and failing to get on the same page really were wonderful.
Jochem?
Jochem snapte niet helemaal wat ik bedoelde.
Schiet mij maar lekker. Hey, dyslect!
And this cast also made for a really fun group to throw around the challenges. Just from Sana, Jochem, Diederik, Emmanuel, and Jeroen alone, you had a lot of really fun possibilities. Diederik and Sana would trade off rushing to complete the challenge or bombing it, as would Jochem, though he'd mostly be in charge of bombing it. What was great about this season is that there were no real Boy Scouts, and everyone had episodes of both being lawful and being destructive.
Ik vind het elke keer weer intrigerend hoe jullie tot de besluit komen. En heel snel. Heel snel voor jullie doen.
But at least the challenge bombing here was fun to watch.
Ah, oké. Dat maakt het een stuk ingewikkelder.
I'm watching the walkie challenge in episode 7 going, you know what helped them a lot? Some aether discipline.
Het enige wat daarvoor nodig was, eterdiscipline.
Clearly my favorite player this season was Diederik. He was not only a fully mental game player, but he was responsible for some of the best lines of the season.
Oh, je gaat zo naar de hel.
Net op het moment dat ik bezig was om mijn fysiotherapeut op de speed dial te krijgen, kwam er gelukkig een opdracht. Je schrijft boeken, nota bene. Je kan niet een taliger wezen in je leven tegenkomen dan Sanne.
I also liked people like Sigrid and especially Emmanuel, who was a really fun player to watch once you were definitely sure she wasn't the mole.
Can we go that way, please? No?
We can only go with the wind.
A lot of people were mixed on Jeroen for reasons I will get to in a couple of seasons. I think he was fine here. He was a perfectly suitable baseline foil. He just wasn't great at giving confessionals, but he was a steady, predictable moving piece in a season of unpredictable people. And sometimes you need a guy like that, despite some very easy criticism.
Ik kies voor Jeroen, omdat hij heeft nog niet echt iets toegevoegd.
And obviously Sanne and Jochem are brilliant game players because the entire game comes down to them. They spend the entire season afraid to align as their various alliance partners keep going home. In episode 8, they finally agree to make a pact, despite Jochem being Sanne's mole, and then, in one unbelievable scene, the two of them figure everything out. Sanne says she put Jochem 3 times, Jochem says he put Diederik 3 times, the last 3 boots were in on Diederik, and yet they're both still here. There's 4 people left, it can't be Sanne, Jochem, or Diederik.
Dan blijft er maar 1 persoon over.
Die ik nog nooit, nou, een paar keer in een test...
Now, full disclosure, I already had the season's mole spoiled for me, and I had an idea that Sanne won, but this scene was astounding to me regardless. Never before have you seen such a clear denouement in a season of The Mole. She's cracked the case. She knows who the mole is. It had taken 8 episodes for someone to write down Thomas as the mole, and she's the only one to do it. What a phenomenal story that is. It gave an unlikely hero who nearly went home, and 2 clear fall guys, not only in Jochem, who was close to the answer but didn't trust his gut, but Diederik, who was aligned with Thomas all game and never thought to question him. That is phenomenal storytelling. So, Thomas, the true soldier of green. I knew Thomas from season 3 of Marauders, and he didn't really last that long there. And after I found out that he was the mole, I was worried he would be a thin, pretty boy mole, no strategy, just vibes. Not at all. Thomas knew when to blend in and when to go for ballsy mole gameplay, and he did it in a way where no one suspected him till the very end. I did track his sabotage, and there were weeks where his was palpable, but far enough behind people like Diederik, Jochem, and Jeroen that he couldn't be detected properly. People really like Thomas as a mole, and I can definitely see why. Though there is a moment in episode 3 where Sigrid is leafing through Thomas's hotel room looking for Jochem's mole book, and she ends up finding a typed document containing quiz answers in Thomas's stuff, and how that didn't blow it wide open for people, I have no idea. But yeah, I loved season 17. Everything I wanted it to be, it delivered, and it got better and better as it went on, with terrific storytelling and great characters. I did not expect this one to become one of my favorites of Vias de Mol, but it jumped up several spots without warning, and I'm extremely happy with it.
I want to thank you all very much for your assistance. Hey! So now let's party here in Underground, right?
So I suck at magic eye puzzles. I do. I get really impatient with them. Because the object is to keep looking at something, the same something, until it suddenly looks different. And I can't really do that. I'm very logical. I see something as it is. I have to really retrain my brain to see it a different way. Kind of a mental health thing as well. So there will be times when I see something one way only to have completely missed what was really going on. And when I do get it, there's the moment where I'm completely disappointed at myself, like, you're so stupid, it was right there. But when I put it into perspective, when I really think about it, then it becomes worth it. Why the preamble? Well, this next season's probably one of the best mole seasons I've ever seen. I've got to give it something. Season 18, which aired from January to March 2018. Season 18 of Vias de Mol begins with the single most incredible stunt any of these seasons have ever done. We see our heroes split into 5 duos in 5 hotels, and they're tasked with meeting somewhere in town. And that itself is a great opening challenge, and a great way of meeting your players and your location. But it's not quite so simple.
Heb je een idee waar in Kiev je bent?
Nee, ik heb geen idee.
Kiev? Zijn jij Kiev?
Ja.
Wij zijn niet in Kiev, vriend.
Niet in Kiev?
Nee, wij zitten in Almaty, Kazachstan. Wat?
Once the trap is sprung and you realize Season 18 is starting in 5 different countries, all bordering the 6th and most crucial one, the season setting of Georgia, so much comes into perspective. Yes, simple things like, why haven't we seen Art yet? Or why do the hotels look different? But you think about the history of the show. This is a show where the gambit of having the mole skydive into a reveal failed 17 years earlier, where multiple seasons had to be shifted to backup locations with throwaway challenges, where reportedly production had to covertly recast a mole as the season was going on when their initial pick got sick and had to be medevaced. Vias de Mole had a terribly long period where it just didn't entirely work, due to the inefficiency of the production crew. And now we're here. It's the equivalent of Doctor Who going from unconvincing alien designs to getting Disney money. We've reached the peak, folks. 5 different countries at the same time. And that's only the beginning. Vias de Mole outdid itself this season on a number of levels. The Georgian setting brought a lot of old-timey, hallowed dog-earing with rich history, humble traditions, and blunt people. Similar to Belgium's season in Greece, it was what it was, and it didn't need to truss itself up and be fake. I summed the season up by the emphasis on Ladas, old-timey cars that aren't pretty, but get the job done, even if they often break down, as they did during the very fun Car Maze Challenge. The challenges in general are several steps up this year just in terms of craftsmanship. The Circus Challenge in Episode 5 is excellent, just from the escalation. First there's just making a house of cards, and then suddenly randomly clowns pop out. Then Art is just randomly the ringmaster. The breakneck pace of all these random tasks, like searching the seats for money or scooping up popcorn for children, really impressed me.
Ja, de kaartenhuizen, ze staan nog steeds niet.
The tension of the musical Cars mission is awesome. The shot of everyone waiting for the same train to arrive is so good. The bridge painting task in Episode 7 is a better version of a task in Season 11. It's using the crowd, but it's also using townspeople to do a bigger task, and so the fun is in approaching locals, as well as seeing how successful the task is. There's so many really fun parts of the Whitewater Rafting Challenge. Ruben as narrator is the best part, just from the moments he cracks up recounting Jan leaping off the raft, or his impression of David, their guide.
Come to my side. En toen zei David de Rus zelf, come to my side of the boat.
But to me, the triumph not only of challenge craftsmanship, but thematic editing, comes in Episode 2. One show after TV presenter Ron Boshard is eliminated despite not even coming into contact with the mole. The challenge itself involves switching opera seats during a performance of Julius Caesar, when suddenly it's revealed that Ron has his own box, and if someone switches into his box, Ron re-enters the game. It is a tense moment, one that becomes upsettingly brutal when none of the contestants budge. The betrayal of Caesar intercut with the betrayal of Ron is an absolutely incredible moment. Cinematic poeticism. You genuinely feel bad for Ron, someone who admittedly was someone I was sure was molding early. Though, don't cry for Ron. Like Jens, he will get his chance. Apart from Ron and Jean-Marc Van Tol, who after 2 shows realized this show really wasn't for him, which, fair play, this cast is incredible. Bella Hay, who I'd ruled out and was just watching be really fun to watch, goes early, and everyone left is basically a suspect. And yes, they're all really fun players, but every time I ruled someone out, they burst right back onto my radar.
Ja, of moeten we eerst naar, want ik heb ook nog 9 en 3. Ja. Nee, jij hebt 3. Nee.
Oh, je bent tijd aan het spelen.
Ben jij de mol?
Ik ben de mol.
Ja, te gek.
Ja.
Relaxed.
Maar Ruben, ik heb al een paar dagen een gevoel wat ik graag met je wil delen.
Oké.
En dat is dat ik denk dat jij de mol bent.
Oké. Nou, dank voor het delen.
But what was so great about this season was that in between the really smart gameplay and tension were just so many incredible character scenes.
Dat is een vrouw, die staat daar.
Dat is een vrouw, die staat daar. Ik zei dat het een vrouw was.
Het is een vrouw, ik zag het al.
Hallo.
Is it me you're looking for?
Ik wil op iemand schieten, sowieso.
Ik ga je lezen, maar ook Simone Wijs.
So going into a finale of Ruben, Olcay, and Jan, I don't need to say it. You know I have a shit moldar. You know that the mole could literally walk right in front of me and I still would think it was Ruben. Of course I was blindsided. I even predicted it. I actually ruled out both Lois and Stina after they picked up the majority of the suspicions and was focused on Ruben for the majority of the game. Simone popped onto my radar briefly right before she was eliminated. Olcay, who was a fantastic game player who did so many iconic things, I basically ruled out for the same reason I ruled out Sundos, which was that with the fan followings they've both gotten, there's no way they're actually the mole. The second I ruled Jan out, I knew it would bite me in the ass. Oh, he can't be the mole. He's bringing in money and taking the lead in challenges. What a fool I was, thinking that someone who brings in money and takes the lead in challenges couldn't be the mole. So, back to the magic eye thing. If I am looking at a season one way, the moment I see what I should have been seeing all along, I'm initially going to be really mad. But then I start to think about it, and then I hear him out. And folks, it took us 15 seasons, but we finally have the celebrity answer to George Langenberg. Someone who was so cheeky, so risky, so willing to dangle himself in front of people, and still got away with it. And I cannot help but respect someone like that. It happened with Dennis, it happened with Case and Margaret, but those took time. All it took me to get John was a couple minutes. And watching his finale package. So much of him talking to the camera and smirking at us or just dancing up to the line. We even see him walk by the contestants during the Meet the Mole challenge, and it's tense. We want him to succeed, and he almost doesn't.
Ben je klaar voor?
Jan completely bamboozled me, but in fairness, he bamboozled everybody. Everybody thought it was Ruben, or Simone, or Stina, or anybody else. Nobody suspected Jan except for Ruben, his alliance partner, his ride or die. And while I do think it's quite a gambit to do 2 consecutive photogenic young guys as the mole, it worked. I didn't think they'd go for someone so similar to Thomas, and they did. They got me. I kept waiting to be pissed about this outcome, and then suddenly I wasn't. I just needed to take it all into perspective. And by the way, Season 18 of Vies de Mol, apart from being an incredible season of television on basically every level, and a terrific week-to-week journey, is a fantastic showcase for Art Rooijakkers. We have seen this man come of age, from being a cocky young TV host to taking the mantle and slowly figuring out how he wants to host this show. A lot like Grant Bowler in Australia Series 4, Art is at his loosest in Season 18, but not because he's trying to keep it fresh. On the contrary, he's having a great time this season, and you can tell.
Mocht het nou niet lukken, daar ga ik niet van uit. Maar ja, ik moet het even zeggen. Een halve dag stonden jullie met de pot en de plus. Eens kijken of jullie in harmonie waren of dat er iemand een valse noot speelde. Daar heb ik heel lang over nagedacht.
It really is a fantastic, lively season from Art, and emblematic of his entire run. He found the perfect sweet spot between Peter Jan's stern annoyance and his own kind, approachable honesty. For many people, Art is the quintessential Vies de Mol host, and he might honestly be my favorite. With no disrespect meant towards Peter Jan or Angela, and maybe a little meant towards Carol, the mole just needs someone like Art. Someone confident, high in status, charismatic, and easy to follow. He was the exact kind of host that this show needed. And Season 18 is a truly fitting send-off to him.
En dan loopt hij gewoon weg.
Bedankt, Art. Ja.
And so, with Season 19, we shift into the modern era of the show, with a new host, some new confidence after a banger Season 18, and some new approaches in production tactics. One thing that is clear, it's all downhill from here. So, what did I end up thinking about the Rick seasons? Is there any redemption for a period of the show that, until recently, was described by many as unsalvageable? And would a true saboteur finally be uncovered and cast into the light? That you will find out in the finale. But to leave you with at least something, if you think I'm going to line up with what the majority of the fan base thinks about these seasons, you are sorely mistaken.